NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play.
What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here. Bring your latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. All right, so it's currently Friday, November 20th, though it's the late Friday night. And NBA free agency is actually already underway, and there's already been a lot of verbal agreements and deals that to discuss and talk about. For most of you, you'll probably be seeing this episode on Saturday, so there might be something that happened overnight that I'm not really addressing or talking about, but at this point, there are a few things to discuss when it comes to NBA free agency. But before we discuss that, we have to look back at the NBA draft, which was just 2 days ago, in which the Nets made some moves, trading away the 19th overall pick and doing a few other subtle trades to acquire a few players. So let's look at that. So let's start with that, yeah. So the day started off first with the Nets doing something that I'm so happy that they did. And that was trade John Amusa. John Amusa was traded to the Pistons. I think there was a draft pick, a second-round pick or something tied into it. I don't remember exactly what the deal was. But the Nets traded John Amusa, who we all know I was so sick of. Like, every NetsBoy episode, I'm like, this guy is freaking useless. He's a waste of a roster spot, all this stuff. Well, obviously, Sean Marks agreed with me and he traded him for Bruce Brown Jr., who in his 2 years with Detroit has put up pretty respectable numbers. He is a wing player. He's more of like a guard more than a forward, but can play the forward spot as well. He is just a pure grit, grinding, hard-nosed defensive player. Like, he is one of the better on-the-ball defenders around. He's athletic. He can finish around the basket. Improved from three from his rookie year. His rookie year, he shot like 27%. Last year, he shot about 34%. Still getting better, but just wing depth. Like, that was the point of that trade. Sean Marks said, we need a little bit more depth on our wings. Let's bring in Bruce Brown. He plays great defense, and he could be a very key role player for the Nets. Of course, at this point, he's really just going to be a third-string type of player probably, but he kind of has a little bit of that David Nwaba type of feel to him. Like David Nwaba, when the Nets signed him, he was just kind of like a depth player, but then he played really, really well and shot career 41% from three and was just energy and grit and toughness, and it became a huge fan favorite. And then, of course, he had the unfortunate Achilles injury, and the Nets waived him, and, he went on his way. But I kind of see Bruce Brown in that David Nwaba type of potential. Will that happen? I don't know. But just a great move by Sean Marks, getting rid of almost a completely useless guy in Musa, bringing in a guy who's proven to be at least a rotational caliber player. So that was the first move Sean Marks did. Then Sean Marks kind of went the route that I would do and said, you know what, there's no one really that great with the 19th overall pick that I feel like we can get to really make a difference. So what does Sean Marks do? He trades the 19th overall pick and gets Landry Shamet from the Clippers. Like, this could go down as one of the best under-the-radar moves that you're going to see over the offseason. I don't know if you've seen Landry Shamet play that much. I mean, maybe you saw him play with the Clippers. Maybe you saw him play with the 76ers. This guy is like your prototypical 3-and-D type of player. He shot 42% from three last year. He's a very good on-the-ball defender, and he's only getting better. He's not a bad finisher. He's basically like a better, younger version of Garrett Temple, and which is why I think the Nets made this move, because the Nets did decline Garrett Temple's team option. So Garrett Temple's a free agent and most likely won't be coming back to the Nets. So I feel like Sean Marks is like, you know what? Let's trade the 19th pick, get a younger player. He's 23 years old, Shamet. A younger player than Temple, a cheaper player than Temple, because I think he's still making on his rookie deal for like $3 million compared to Temple's $5 million. And it just has more potential. So I absolutely love the trade. I think Shamet is going to be a major, major player for the Nets in the rotation. Like I said, he shot 42% from three. That's his main niche, is being able to spot up the floor and stretch the floor. But he can also, like I said, he can also finish, and is a good defensive player. Just a great fit. plays hard. I didn't see this coming. I really didn't think the Clippers were going to trade him, but the Clippers, they have their reasons why they made the trade because Shamit's a very good player, and I'm very pleased, and I think a great move by Sean Marks. So the Nets did that, and then in a few other independent moves, they ended up getting the rights to Reggie Perry, who was the 57th overall pick in the draft from Mississippi State. Look, this is a very minor move, maybe. This is more just something I think Sean Marks did just to create a little bit more depth in the front court. I don't think we'll be seeing Reggie Perry anytime soon, if at all. I think he's going to go that, Jalen Hands route. But speaking of which, he was in that trade to get Perry, so he's no longer on the Nets' hands. Because I remember Jalen Hands was the guy the Nets drafted last year in the second round, and he never cracked the rotation, stayed in the G League. And I kind of think Perry's going to be the same thing, but you never know. He's about 6'10", 250, big body. He's like your traditional power forward center. He's tough. He gets rebounds. He's physical, has a decent offensive touch, can stretch the floor a little bit. He's inconsistent from three, but he did make some threes in college when he was left open, which is always good in the NBA. But, I don't know a lot about him. I didn't see a lot of highlights. I just know that he's a physical, brooding type of big who's very good at rebounds. And so the type of player that comes to my mind when I think about physical player who's good at rebounds is like Reggie Evans. So if he's like as good as Reggie Evans was, it's a great move by the Nets, because Reggie Evans, another fan favorite by the Nets, just a tough physical guy who could gobble up every rebound, around. And so, look, I don't know, but that's what the Nets did. So that's what the Nets did. They traded the 19th overall pick, got Landry Shamet, made some trades, and got the rights to Reggie Perry, and that's all. That's all they did. So, and then they traded for Bruce Brown. My boy Miles Powell did not get drafted. Very upsetting. And maybe even more upsetting is the fact that he ended up signing with the Knicks. So, that's a little bit of a tough one for a Nets boy to swallow, being, Brooklyn Nets fan and not liking the Knicks. But then I took a step back and I said, you know what? That is definitely the best move for Miles Powell. The Knicks, especially at this point, are so talent depleted. Like, yes, Obi Toppin, big fan of his, though they have a million power forwards now. But in the backcourt, who's their guards right now? Like really? Like who RJ Barrett is like a small forward guard, okay. Who else? Frank Ntilikina? Like, who's in the backcourt right now for the Knicks? So I think this is a great move by Powell because he's got a legit chance to not only make the team, but be a significant rotational player for this rebuilding Knicks team. So not happy that he's on the Knicks, but for him personally, I thought this is the best move he could have made. He's also from New Jersey, so he obviously wanted to be local. And, hey, let's go, Powell. I'm wishing the best for you. So I hope that he's there against the, makes the roster and cracks the rotation and is a significant player for the Knicks. And maybe in a couple of years, the Knicks will do something stupid and trade him to the Nets or something. I don't know. That wouldn't happen, but I don't know. So anyway, so that's what happened to my boy Powell. Jaden McDaniels, the guy I did want the Nets to get, ended up getting drafted and then traded to the Timberwolves. So whatever. I'm not Sean Marks. I'm not an NBA GM. Those are the moves I would have done. But that's what the Nets did at the draft. So liked the moves, though. Liked everything Sean Marks did. Liked Landry Shamet. Liked Bruce Brown. I think Reggie Perry at depth is good. Smart moves. Now we enter free agency. And like I said, free agency already started. Already a lot of big names have been agreed to terms and so on and so forth. And the Nets did do what they said they would do. And that is bring back Joe Harris. Woohoo! Joe Harris officially agreed to sign back with the Nets, 4 years, $75 million. Great job. Couldn't be happier for Joe Harris and for the Nets. Sean Marks said that was the number one priority. Joe Harris wanted to come back, and now they have Joe Harris has solidified back with the Nets. Regardless of what happens with the speculation with James Harden or anything else, Joe Harris will be on this team next year, and I love it. And if you think about it, Joe Harris, who shot 42% from three, Landry Shamet shot 42% from three. Taurean Prince, if he doesn't get traded, he shot like 39% last year from three. You are solidifying the perimeter three shooters for next season with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Like, you have just completely made this team a perimeter threat to play off those guys. I'm going to love it when Shamet and Joe Harris are out there because who are you going to guard? Like, I'm going to love it if it's going to be Shamet, Harris, Kyrie, and Durant. Because once again, who are you going to guard? You double, Durant or Kyrie, if you double either of them, you're going to have either Shamet or Harris open. Like, that is going to be great. So Sean Marks did some great maneuvering there. Joe Harris is back. Like I said, Garrett Temple, they declined his option. That doesn't mean he's not going to come back to the Nets. I don't think he will, though. I think that Sean Marks is kind of going to move away from him unless he agrees to come back at a much lower contract. But, look, unless they trade for James Harden, this Nets team is basically set. You look at the roster that they have right now. See if I can remember everyone without missing someone. Kyrie Irving, Karis LeVert, Joe Harris back, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Jordan, Jared Allen, Taurean Prince, Timothy Abu-Cabarrot, Landry Shamet, and Spencer Dinwiddie. There's your rotation right there. Then you still have Rodion Kurucs. You still have Nicholas Claxton. Bruce Brown, who they just traded for. So, that right there is 13 players. And obviously the Nets have the rights to, Reggie Perry. So who knows? Maybe the Nets will bring in a few other players, but basically, there's only right there. If you exclude Reggie Perry, that's 13 players. You can only have 15 on your signed. So the Nets only have 2 more roster spots without trading anyone. So, the Nets team basically is what it is, barring any type of major trade. That being said, there are rumors about Serge Ibaka coming to the Nets. Apparently, Kevin Durant's brother tweeted something out that someone said, where's Serge Ibaka going to go? And Kevin Durant's brother said, Brooklyn. This was speculation from last year. I've talked about it before. Kevin Durant's been trying to recruit Serge Ibaka to come. The Nets do have the mid-level exception that they could give Serge Ibaka, which he might be willing to come to try to win another championship, though he really, really liked playing with the Raptors. He's a favorite there, and I'm sure the Raptors are going to do everything they can to bring him back. And I do think that a whole bunch of teams are going to want Serge Ibaka. But if Serge Ibaka really does want to come to the Nets, I think they'll take him. And if he does come to the Nets, I don't even know what I would do. I mean, there's no room for Serge Ibaka. Honestly, I hate to say it, but the Nets would have to trade away players like Jared Allen or Taurean Prince because Serge Ibaka is more of a center than a power forward these days, the way the NBA is, though he can play the power forward. He's more like a stretch 5 who could do everything. So if they do sign Ibaka, they probably do have to trade they should trade DeAndre Jordan, but they won't because he's buddies with Durant, and we all know how Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving is running the Nets. They will probably trade Jared Allen. And, I don't want Jared Allen to get traded, but I will say this. If Serge Ibaka does sign, I'm okay, especially since the Nets could get something pretty solid for Jared Allen. Look, maybe the Nets go bold and they trade away their whole entire team for James Harden, but they bring in Serge Ibaka. At the end of the day, as much as I wouldn't want to see that, that's a pretty damn good team if you got Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Joe Harris, and Serge Ibaka, and DeAndre Jordan. And Landry Shamet, because I'm sure he wouldn't be in the deal, and Bruce Brown. So maybe that is Sean Marks' plan, and that basically you're just, if you do that, you're basically saying, hey, we're the Oklahoma City Thunder just, 5 years or 7 years in the future from when they made it to the finals, right? Ibaka, Durant, and Harden, that would be funny. But, I still don't really want that. But I could get behind that a little bit more. But I will say this. Going back to the James Harden rumors. We all know I don't want James Harden. Mentioned in the last episode. Hate the guy's guts. If the Nets did trade James Harden and trade away their whole team, I'm not going to get as dramatic to say I wouldn't be a Nets fan anymore or I would hate the Nets. But I will say that being a Nets fan would just kind of lose its flair. And it just wouldn't be fun anymore. Because the one thing that has always made being a Nets fan fun, and I've been a Nets fan for over 20 years, since the Jason Kidd years in 2000 and 2001 when the Nets traded for him. The Nets always had a bit of an underdog feel to them. Even when they were a good team, they always had an underdog feel. Always. Even right now, with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on the team and the team that they still have an underdog feeling because everyone's saying, oh, we don't know what Durant's going to do. Kyrie Irving is toxic in the locker room. The Lakers are still the Lakers. Like, the Nets are going to be a good team, but they still may not win a championship. So the Nets still have that chip on the shoulder underdog feel. And it's just so much more fun when this Nets team overcomes that and proves themselves. If the Nets get James Harden, regardless of who else is on the team, and just those players that I just named, forget if the Nets sign Serge Ibaka or not. Just the fact they brought back Joe Harris, Landry Shamet, and then James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Jordan. There's no fun anymore because the Nets would not be an underdog team at all. They'd be must-watch TV because everybody wanted to know how well would this team play together. Is there enough balls to go around for Durant, Harden, and Kyrie? But everyone would expect them to win. Their brand of basketball would just be a lot of isolation, and it just wouldn't be fun. It wouldn't be fun. I wouldn't enjoy myself watching Nets games anymore. I'd still root for them. I'll still do these Nets boys, but I just wouldn't be as thrilled about what I'm seeing from the Nets. And it to me would make that championship, if the Nets win a championship, just not as sweet. Just like I'm sure there are a lot of Warrior fans that felt when Kevin Durant came to the Warriors after they won 73 games, who was just like, yeah, this is cool and all, but it's kind of lost its flair. The 73-win team was fun. They played like a team. They had great role players, 2 great players, and so on and so forth. Speaking of which, how terrible is the news that happened to Klay Thompson with the Achilles injury? That is very unfortunate, but I'm not going to talk about that. That's just popped in my mind. But that team won 73 games. Everything's great. Blah, blah, this. Oh, let's bring Kevin Durant. Now this team is completely unbeatable. And I'm pretty sure those 2 other championships that they won just kind of lost their flair a little bit. I'm pretty sure a lot of Warrior fans are just yeah, these championships don't mean as much. And I feel like it'd be the same thing if the Nets got James Harden. I really do, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Sean Marks kind of alluded to not trading for James Harden, but he also said anything can happen. In an interview recently, he said that they're not going to mortgage the future for just one player, which I love. Because when Sean Marks got hired, he said his goal was not only to make the Nets competitive and win a championship, but to build a dynasty. Similar to the way the Spurs were. Other than last year, before last year, the Spurs went to the playoffs 20 straight years. Sean Marks said he wanted to build that type of consistency. Well, if you trade away your entire team for James Harden, and like I said, we already know that for the Nets to try to pull off that move, they'll have to trade LeVert, Dinwiddie, Taurean Prince, Jared Allen, possibly Nicholas Claxton, and at least 4 first-round draft picks. You are legitimately mortgaging the future and giving yourself a 3-year window, which you probably will win 2 championships the next 3 years. But after that 3rd year, Durant will be 35, Harden will be 34, Kyrie will be 32. They all will be opting out of their contracts and probably going somewhere else. And then what do you have to build on? You have nothing because you traded away all your good, young, talented players and draft picks to try to win now. And I'm not for it. So I'd rather the Nets keep this team the way it is, with the depth that they have and the talent that they have, and just roll with it. And I said this before. Let's see what this team looks like. You built this team over the last 3 years, Sean Marks, through signing G League players, late first-round draft picks, making smart moves, bringing in guys like Joe Harris who were afterthoughts on other teams. And you created this culture. Let's see this through. Let's wait and see what this team looks like. Look, I said this before. If come February, we'll say, because the season starts December 22nd. Come February or the first 20 or so games and the Nets are 500, 10-10 after 20 games or something, okay. Then I would say something needs to be done. This obviously isn't working. Go ahead and make a drastic move, Sean Marks. Trade away a bunch of guys. Do what you need to do. But let's see what happens. It's too early. And I just don't want it. Whatever, you already know that. I did that last episode. So there you have it. So that's what's happening with the Nets. Joe Harris is back. Traded for Landry Shamet. Traded for Bruce Brown. Got Reggie Perry's rights. Bye-bye Musa. Bye-bye Temple. Possibly getting Serge Ibaka. And maybe James Harden. And yeah, so that's what's going on. So keep your eyes open for the next NetsBoy episode, which will probably be in a couple more days. Maybe like 3 or 4 more days once free agency continues. And, we'll see if there's any other news that happens over the next couple of days, if the Nets do anything. And let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think about what the Nets did on draft day with Shamet and Bruce Brown, about, the Nets bringing back Joe Harris, the speculation about Serge Ibaka, all these things. Let me know what you guys think. Comment below, and we'll see what happens. So, until then, this is NetsBoy, signing off.